There are three bank accounts that show up in almost every wealthy person's financial life. Not three investments, not three stocks, three accounts. And here's the part that's going to bother you. The gap between someone who's wealthy and someone who's broke isn't usually the amount of money involved. It's the number of accounts that money is sitting in and what each one is actually for. Professor Real Numbers ran the numbers on this, and by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly what those three accounts are, what job each one does, and how to set up all three this week with whatever amount of money you already have. You don't need to be rich to run this system. You need to stop doing the one thing almost everyone does by default, which is keeping all their money in a single account and asking it to do three completely different jobs at once. Here's the mechanism before we get into the specifics. Money has jobs. Some money's job is to protect you. Some money's job is to grow. And some money's job is to wait for an opportunity and strike when one shows up. The average person puts all three jobs into one checking account and wonders why that money never seems to do anything. The wealthy person splits the jobs up, gives each one its own account, and lets each account do exactly one thing extremely well. Think about what happens when one account tries to do all three jobs at once, because this is where almost everyone's financial life quietly breaks down. Money meant to protect you against emergencies gets treated as spendable the moment a good deal shows up because it's sitting right there next to your regular balance with no label on it. Money that should be growing sits earning almost nothing because moving it feels like touching the emergency fund, so it just doesn't get touched at all. And money that could be seized on for a real opportunity never gets the chance, because by the time you've mentally sorted through what's actually available versus what's already spoken for, the moment has usually passed. One account, three jobs, and all three jobs done poorly. That's not a personality flaw, it's a structural problem, and structural problems have structural fixes. Let's start with account one, because this is the one most people think they already have, and most people have it wrong. Account one is the protection account. Its only job is to absorb shocks. A job loss, a medical bill, a car repair, a slow month if you're self-employed. This is not your savings account in the way you're picturing it. It's not where extra money goes when you don't know what else to do with it. It's a specific number, usually 3 to 6 months of essential expenses sitting somewhere boring, liquid, and completely untouched by anything else in your financial life. Let's put a face on this. Take someone named Alina. Alina makes decent money, has about $9,000 sitting in her regular checking account, and feels reasonably fine about her finances. But that $9,000 is doing 4 jobs at once. It's her emergency fund, her vacation fund, her new laptop fund, and her rent buffer, all mixed into one number with no boundary between them. When her car needs a $2,200 repair, she pulls from that same pile. And now, every other goal quietly gets smaller without her ever deciding that on purpose. Now, take the wealthy version of Alina's situation. Same income, same $9,000. But it's split. $6,000 sits in a dedicated protection account, completely separate, earning a modest yield in a high-yield savings account, and it is never, under any circumstance, used for anything except a genuine shock. The remaining $3,000 is free to be spent, saved, or invested without anyone confusing it with the emergency fund. When the same $2,200 car repair hits, it comes out of the protection account, exactly as designed, and nothing else in her financial life has to shrink. Same total money, completely different outcome. That's the entire point of account one. It's not about having more, it's about drawing a line nothing else is allowed to cross. Here's the detail most people get wrong about this account, and it's worth being specific about. The number isn't 3 to 6 months of your income. It's 3 to 6 months of your essential expenses, which for most people is a smaller, more achievable number than they think. Rent or mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance,
minimum debt payments. Not your gym membership, not your streaming subscriptions, not your weekend plans. If Alina's essential expenses run $2,400 a month, her real target for account 1 isn't some abstract, intimidating figure. It's somewhere between $7,200 and $14,400. And she can build toward that number in stages instead of waiting until she has all of it at once to start treating it as separate. The account doesn't need to be full to start doing its job. It just needs to exist, and it needs to be the only thing that job touches.
Account 2 is the growth account, and this is where most people's money actually goes to die a slow death. Here's what that looks like in practice. Extra cash builds up in the checking account. It sits there for months, sometimes years, earning close to nothing because moving it feels like a decision, and decisions get postponed. The wealthy version of this money never sits still that long. It's automatically funneled into an account whose only job is to grow, usually a brokerage account holding index funds, treasury bills, or a mix of both. And it moves there on a schedule, not a feeling. Here's the number that makes this obvious. If Alina's extra $3,000 just sits in checking, earning basically nothing, in a year, it's still $3,000. If that same $3,000 goes into a simple treasury bill fund yielding around 4%, it's earned roughly $120, doing absolutely nothing except existing in the right account instead of the wrong one. That's not a huge number on its own, but it's not really about the $120. It's about the habit. Wealthy people don't let cash sit in a wrong job account long enough to matter. The moment money isn't needed for protection or spending, it moves into the growth account automatically, the same week it arrives, not the same year. This account also has a second job that most people miss entirely, which is tax efficiency. Interest sitting in a regular savings account gets taxed at your full ordinary income rate, federal and state. Certain growth account instruments, like treasury bills, are exempt from state and local tax. On a meaningful balance, that difference compounds into real money over years, not because the account is exotic, but because it was built to grow instead of just sit. Zoom out from any single dollar amount and look at the pattern instead, because the pattern is the actual lesson. The average person's checking account balance drifts up and down all month, spikes on payday, drains by the last week, and whatever's left over at any given moment is essentially random. It was never decided to be there. It's just what didn't get spent yet. The growth account breaks that randomness. It has a rule attached to it. Something like any balance above $2,000 in checking after bills clear gets moved automatically. That single rule turns leftover, undecided money into money with a job, on a schedule a person doesn't have to remember or feel motivated about. This is the exact same mechanic that shows up in every version of this channel's savings account breakdown. The bank was never the enemy. Idle, unassigned cash was. Account 2 exists specifically so cash stops being idle the moment it's not needed somewhere else. Account 3 is the one almost nobody has, and it's the one that actually separates wealthy behavior from everyone else. This is the opportunity account. Its only job is to be loaded, liquid, and ready to move the instant a real opportunity shows up, and to sit completely empty the rest of the time doing nothing but waiting. Here's why this matters so much. Opportunities in real life don't wait for you to find money. A distressed property goes on the market under value. A friend needs a bridge loan for a business and offers real interest in return. A stock the market has clearly overreacted on drops 30% in a week. In every one of these situations, the person who wins isn't the person who's smartest in the moment. It's the person who already has cash sitting somewhere separate, funded and ready to deploy, without having to sell something else, break a certificate of deposit early, or wait 2 weeks for a transfer to clear.
Alina, in the version where all her money sits in one account, sees the same 30% drop everyone else sees. She knows it's an opportunity. She even has the money technically available, but it's tangled up with her rent buffer and her laptop fund. And by the time she decides whether she can actually afford to move it, the opportunity has already closed. The wealthy version of Alina has a fourth pile of money, smaller than the other two, sitting in a separate brokerage account, earning a little interest while it waits, explicitly not counted as spendable and not counted as emergency reserve. When the opportunity shows up, she doesn't have to think. The money is already positioned. That's the entire advantage. Not more money. Money that was pre-decided to be available. This is the account most people skip because it feels like the least urgent one. Protection feels urgent because you can picture the disaster. Growth feels urgent because everyone talks about investing. The opportunity account feels optional, right up until the exact week you need it. And by then, it's too late to build it from scratch.
Now, here's how these three accounts actually work as one system, because the separation is the entire mechanism, not the accounts individually. Every dollar that comes in gets assigned a job before it's allowed to just sit somewhere. New income first tops up the protection account until it hits its target number, usually 3 to 6 months of expenses. Once that target is hit, new money splits between the growth account and the opportunity account, based on how aggressive you want to be. A dollar sitting unassigned in a general checking account is a dollar with no job, and a dollar with no job is a dollar that gets spent on whatever's convenient that week. This is the actual difference between Alina's two versions. It was never about income. Both versions of her earned the exact same amount. The wealthy version simply refused to let money sit around without a job assigned to it. And that one habit, repeated over years, is what produces a completely different financial life from an identical starting income.
So here's how you actually run this yourself, starting this week with whatever amount you currently have. Step 1. Open a separate high-yield savings account and label it Protection. Move whatever you can spare there right now, even if it's small, and set a target of 3 to 6 months of essential expenses. Don't wait to feel ready. $100 in a labeled account is already doing more than the same $100 sitting in checking with no job assigned to it. Step 2. Open a brokerage account if you don't already have one, and set up an automatic transfer that moves any cash sitting in checking beyond what you need for bills into that account, weekly or monthly, into something simple like a treasury bill fund or index fund. Step 3. Open a third account, separate from both of the above, and fund it with a smaller amount you explicitly decide you're willing to deploy fast if a real opportunity shows up. Label it Opportunity and do not touch it for anything else, not even a good sale on something you want.
If you're wondering how to split new money between account 2 and account 3 once account 1 is fully funded, there's no single right ratio. But a reasonable starting point most people can run without overthinking it is something like 70% into growth and 30% into opportunity. Growth is the account that compounds no matter what happens in any given month, so it deserves the bigger share by default. Opportunity is the account that might sit untouched for a year and then suddenly matter enormously in a single week. It doesn't need to be large to be effective. It needs to be there, funded, and completely separate from the money you already think of as spendable. One more detail worth naming directly, because it's the part that quietly sabotages this entire system for most people who try it. These three accounts only work if they're actually inconvenient to raid. If the opportunity account is sitting in the same bank, one tap away from your checking account, on the same banking app you check every day, it will get spent on things that feel urgent but aren't actual opportunities. Put real friction between yourself and these accounts. A different bank, no debit card linked to them, a transfer that takes a day or two to clear. That friction isn't a flaw in the system. It's the entire reason the system holds up under pressure instead of collapsing the first time something shiny shows up in a sale.
The amounts don't matter nearly as much as the separation. A protection account with $500 in it is still doing its job better than $9,000 sitting in one undivided pile. The habit of assigning every dollar a job before it's allowed to sit is the actual wealth mechanism here, not the size of any single account. Alina eventually did split her $9,000 the way we just described. 18 months later, her protection account was fully funded at 4 months of expenses. Her growth account had quietly compounded past where her old single account ever would have gone. And when a friend's business needed a short-term bridge loan at a real return, she had the money sitting separately, ready, and said yes without having to touch anything else in her life to do it. Same income the entire time. The only thing that changed was which account each dollar was assigned to the moment it arrived.
So here's the question worth sitting with. Right now, today, how many jobs is your money doing at once, all crammed into one account with no boundaries between them? Tell me in the comments which of these 3 accounts you're missing, because for most people watching this, it's account 3. If this changed how you're thinking about where your money actually sits, subscribe to The Real Numbers Show and hit the notification bell. We break down the hidden math behind the financial decisions you face every day.